And so when I got trained in this, I was seeing how helpful it was in our family. It has 3 different principles that you follow: connecting, empowering, and then correcting. So we focus a ton on the connection and the empowering pieces for parents and kids, so that when we come to the correcting piece of it, it's not so big. It's not a blow up. It's not a, you're just the evil stepmom, right? It's this, no, we've built trust. So whenever I say, hey, you need to put that down, there's trust there. And they do that because they trust you.
Welcome to the Nacho Kids podcast.
Yeah. If this is not what you clicked on, you're welcome anyway.
You're welcome anyway.
You ever done that? Like
Yes.
click on the wrong podcast.
Well, people will send me stuff through Facebook Messenger and it's like TikTok videos. Well, I don't have TikTok on my phone. And so I'll click on it and it takes me to something completely different and tells me to sign in and all this stuff. I can never watch the videos. It drives me crazy. But there have been times that people have sent me Facebook videos and I click on them and it takes me to something different too. And I'm like, I know they didn't send this to me because it's not the same picture or the same title.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite annoying.
Yeah. You have to be careful.
Yes, you have to be careful, especially when you're sending text who they are to. Yeah, I got a little story about that one time with one of the step kids' girlfriends. Whoops.
Yeah. I know there have been times when I've sent you texts and I like triple check the name before I send it because I'm like, I don't want anybody to read this.
No, those are those bad texts you send.
Well, even if they're not bad, they could just be misunderstood.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And here lately, I don't know what's happening, but on Facebook Messenger, I'll reply to somebody and then I'll send them a reply. I go to hit my back button and it puts me clapping like the avatar people or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a picture of me clapping. And I'm like, what the crap? And then I hit the back button again and it does it again. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Or the little thumbs up. I've had people send me messages that were not good messages.
Yeah.
You're like, thumbs up. They're like, hey, I'm sick in the hospital. Like, cool.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Or somebody will post something on Facebook and people do laughing emojis or whatever. And they're like, why do you find this funny? Their child died. And they're like, I did not mean to click that.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Yeah. Glad it's not just me.
Yeah, it's not just you, David. It's not just you. But anyway, our guest today is stepmom Jessica. She's been married 2 years, dating 4 years. Stepson is with them full time. She and my mom have a good relationship.
Cool.
Unfortunately, they are in kind of like a custody battle now.
Oh, that's going to be interesting to navigate that good relationship then.
Yeah. One thing that Jessica and I talk about is trust-based relationship intervention. Ever heard of it, David?
I have not.
Yay, I know something you don't. TBRI. TBRI is an attachment-based, trauma-informed intervention that is designed to meet the complex needs of vulnerable children. There are 3 core principles: connecting, empowering, and correcting.
Okay.
These principles focus on building strong relationships, meeting physical and emotional needs, and guiding appropriate behaviors through positive reinforcement and consistent caregiving.
Well, this sounds like it'd be an interesting conversation then.
It is, because a lot of this applies to stepkids.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yes, so I'm going to sign up for the class.
You should.
I am.
So I'm sure you got some kid trauma in there somewhere.
Oh, we know I do. You do too.
We're not talking about me right now.
You do too, David.
We'll
talk about you.
Oh, boy.
So I really think that this is good. All right, that's all we're going to tell you.
All right, let's get to listening.
Today we have stepmom Jessica. Hey, Jessica, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So tell us a little bit about your life. Not just your blend, your life. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, how much time do we have here? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, girl, we can break it up into 3 episodes if we need to.
Oh, goodness. So yeah, I am in North Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I've got an awesome 10-year-old stepson, and I'm married to his dad, of course. We've been married for just under 2 years, so I'm actually a new stepmom.
Oh,
But I've been in his life since he was 6, the step kiddo. So that's been an awesome journey. I am an LPC associate, so licensed professional counselor associate. I'm working on becoming fully licensed, and I live the blended family life, and I also work with a lot of blended families. So this whole blended family thing is something I do on the daily. I've got 2 cute little dogs. They're our world as well. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. Yeah.
okay. And you don't have any kids of your own?
No, I don't yet. We're hoping to have some more, but right now it's just the 3 of us.
Okay. So when you started dating your husband, did you think twice about him having kids, or you didn't think a whole lot about it? Because it's not like you didn't want kids.
Yeah, so we actually met on a dating app, as most people are meeting nowadays. I had kind of exhausted all my options around me. It was, nobody at church, nobody at my work that I was currently at. I was like, all right, let me try these dating apps. And funny story that I always like to share about us is I got on Hinge. Shout out to Hinge, on a Sunday evening around 6 or 7 o'clock. And him and I started talking Monday, the next day at 7 o'clock. And so I was on there 24 hours and I started chatting with him, and the rest is kind of history. But yeah, whenever I saw him, he obviously had a picture of him and a little boy. And so I kind of knew that he probably had a kid. But what's kind of funny in a way is I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus, and I'm a Christian. And so one of the things that the Lord had really pressed on my heart long ago was this thought of adoption and just potentially adopting a child. And so whenever him and I started dating, I really took a minute before we even met, before we even went on a first date. I took a minute and I was like, okay, before I even get involved with this guy, do I think that I could marry somebody that's got a kid? And really, the Lord just reminded me of that He had put that on my heart such a long time ago, of that spirit of adoption, which sometimes in a way when, you're joining in a blended family or you're dating somebody with a kid, that's kind of what it can be like in a way, is kind of adopting this kid into your heart. And so I kind of said yes right away to that thought, and we started dating. And then about 2 years later or so is when we got married. And that thought has never changed, that, oh man, I made a mistake, or, anything like that. Cause that was one of the things from the very, very beginning that I just really knew, okay, if I'm going to date this person, I need to be serious about it. I need to make sure we're doing things to protect his kid and just really doing this right. And so it's been an interesting journey for sure, but an amazing one at the same time.
How often do you have stepson?
Yeah, so he is with us pretty much full time. Mom has first, third, fifth weekends type deal. But he's been with my husband pretty much full time since he was born. And so
Really?
Yeah, he's got primary. So that was another big thing. It's like, it's not just a first, third, fifth weekend stepmom type ordeal or step kid in the mix. It's like, it's almost full time. So yeah, he goes to school literally on the school's on our street that we live on. So that's nice. And he's with us most of the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that your husband had almost full custody from the beginning.
Yeah. It's been an interesting journey for him, and definitely not been the easiest for everybody. I would say it's not the most, it's not the greatest situation that we've been in. It's more of that parallel type parenting, that term, not so much a huge co-parenting. But we do it well with the situation that we have. I do think that, all of us, bio mom included, we try and we do it to the best of our abilities, and really trying to keep the kiddo, the main thing here, which is something that is really important to us, that what we do for him. And so, it's cordial, but it definitely could be better.
Yeah.
As we all wish, I'm sure.
Do you have contact with Biomom?
Yeah. Her and I have a very good relationship, I would say, from my point of view. I do my best to be very respectful of her title in his life, right? She gave birth to him. And so, our kiddo, or my stepson, bonus son type deal, he calls me Jessica. He refers to me by my first name. Sometimes we joke, he'll call me Smama, like stepmom, but put together. But
I
that
like
was one
that.
of the things. Yeah, Smama is what he'll say. Like, they joke around, just the best Smama, like, just a fun little thing. And because I've tried to be respectful of her place in his life. And when his dad and I got engaged, that was one of the funny things. He's like, what am I going to call you now? And I was like, you call me whatever you want. I will always be Jessica if that's what you want it to be, and so that's kind of how we've kept it. And that's totally fine for me. He has a mom, right? And I would never try and take that place from her or from him. And so that's kind of always been my viewpoint with her. We're on the Nacho Kid podcast, right? So talking about kind of like staying out of it as well. I try and leave the parenting up to mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, they communicate. I don't make decisions, for him. I talk with my husband. He talks with Biomom a lot about, stuff, and we figure it out. And we still have a team approach in a way, but at the same time, at the end of the day, dad is dad, and he's the primary parent. And so he's the one that makes the decisions. And so Biomom and I's communication is very much, hey, I stuck a shirt from your place in his backpack, and hey, I'm going to have him if you want to pick him up here, if we want to, figure something out, or hey, I think I have a water bottle of yours, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
All those simple little things that, it's easier for me to just shoot a text message sometimes and do it that way. But that's kind of the extent of our relationship. So, yeah.
Does your husband, did he start off with majority of custody because of something Biomom did wrong? Or
it wasn't, and I will say we're in the middle of we've been in custody battles a lot with him, and so there's not a whole lot of details I'll share too much on that, just due to the situation we're in right now. But dad really stepped up to the plate at the very beginning. I think there was just some things that mom struggled with, and so dad kind of step up, took over. And it was kind of, in the papers that once he's in school, so like pre-K, around 4, he came to live with dad primarily, because dad will determine, where he goes to school. And so I think it was kind of like a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off type deal at the very beginning. And so they kind of shared it a little bit at the very, very beginning. And then once our kiddo kind of turned, the age where he needed to be in a more solid spot where he could be in school, then dad kind of took over, and that's how it's always been since then. So mom for a while lived in Abilene until a couple years ago. So she was about 3 hours away from where dad and kiddo lived. And so that also made it hard for, them to have any other different arrangements, because she couldn't drive them to school 3 hours away. And so it wasn't until about 3 years ago or so, she moved a little bit closer. So yeah, that's kind of how it's always been.
And so, not trying to ask too much, but she's trying to get more time with him now.
Yeah, there's been, some things, and yeah, so now it's about every 2 years, there'll be a little something that pops up, and so she'll try and gain full custody of him, kind of thing. And so it's just navigating, through all of that. And we're kind of in the middle of another one of those right now. But every time it always typically ends the same, with dad still having primary. And, so we don't really worry too much about all of that, because that's kind of how it's always been. He's a great kid. He's, very, very smart, doing very well in school. We have his parents, actually. So grandma and grandpa only live 2 streets away from us. My family is 10 minutes away from us. So there's a huge support system here that he's got. And before my husband and I got married, they actually lived with grandma and grandpa. And so grandma has always been a huge, huge part of his life, and he just absolutely loves her. And so, it's just another added support that he's got when he's with us. And, just a little bit of more of that stability piece that kids need sometimes. And so that's kind of how it's always been for us on our end.
But going through court is so stressful.
Oh, yeah.
How do you not let that get to you?
My like I said earlier, my faith is a big one. I serve a big God, and so it kind of, I rely on that a lot. But that's not the easiest answer, right? It's like we could butter that up with everything, but it doesn't always feel good. And so, one of the things that we as a family have focused on is him, right? Like we're focused on giving him a good life, and we focus on the important things, and we have to learn to let go of the things that we can let go of.
Right.
We can sit here and, nitpick and be frustrated that his lunch is not as great, or his bedtime is different, or, with that parallel parenting, there's a lot of things that differ from house to house, and we can sit here and get frustrated and get super nitpicky about that. But one thing that I've learned is, okay, what are the main things for us as for our family on this end? Our faith is important. And so we spend time at church and with that community, and we invest our time in him investing time in that community too. And then, one of the things too that I have thought a lot about is, we're really big on nutrition, and he has some focus issues. And so we're really big on finding things that work for him and really giving him those things. And then we're also really big on sleep and making sure he gets enough sleep. And sometimes in the other household, he doesn't really get that, right? And so I could sit here and we could all be like, oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. And we could do that. And so one of the things that we really, on our end, on our side, we're like, okay, well, we can't fix what happens over there, right? But we can help make sure that he gets what he needs here. And then, if he doesn't get enough sleep over there, if he goes without this or that, okay, whatever, we at least know he's got it here. And so that's what we focus on, is what are the things that we can do here to help set him up for success when he's not here. So, that might look like he has a pretty regular bedtime schedule here. Like maybe if he didn't have 2 households, we would have a little bit more leeway with that. But we give him that here because we know he might not get it, on a weekend or something like that. And so it's just finding things and while still having fun, right? Like my big thing, like I said earlier, I'm a therapist, so I work with a lot of blended families as well. And one of my big things is finding the balance between structure and nurture. It's huge for me. And how can we still maintain a sense of structure in our home, but an immense amount of nurture, because that's what kids really need. And so we still have fun, like on occasion we stay up movie night, that kind of thing. But for the most part, we try and give him the building blocks. We always say that, like, do you have all your building blocks for the day? Good breakfast and your vitamins and your water. And we try and give him those here. So just in case he's lacking elsewhere, we know that at least we can do that here. So that's where I've found, okay, what's the one thing, even my husband, like, what's the one thing that I want to try and help communicate is important for him over at the other house? instead of being nitpicky about all the little things that we want to communicate to bio mom, it's like, what's the one thing that's important to us? And we found that it's sleep for him. And so that's the one thing that we've tried to, well, my husband has tried to really communicate is like, hey, we really need to try and get him some good sleep. So that's kind of how we've survived that in a way, is just, we cannot control all of it. We can't nitpick about all of it. We can't fix all of it, but we can focus on one thing that we think is important for him and try and help communicate that thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's what's best.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it would be easy for you to go from the relationship you have with bio mom of, oh, I think I have one of your water bottles here, to messaging her going, why don't you just stop the crap and quit taking us to court?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or to not even message her about the bottle because you're tired of her taking you to court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It would be very easy, because there are times that I'm like, why can't can we go sit down and have a margarita together and just chit chat and figure this all out together? Right. Like sometimes I'm like, do we have to spend his college fund just to get the same answer? You know?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I found that kindness is really the only answer to having a successful life with this, with 2 households and co-parenting and all of it. Kindness is really the only thing that keeps the kiddos happy too, right? Like he's the most important thing for us. And so it will do nothing for me to, talk to her in a way that is anything but kind. I'm not going to convince her, right? She has her own, of course, she's bio mom. Of course she wants her son, right? Like, of course she wants more time with her kid.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's my thing too. I've always taken like, okay, well, let me put myself in her shoes, right? Let me take a minute and think about, I only get to see my kid during these certain days, or, like, of course this would happen. Or, there are some things that I don't understand. There are some things that happen and I'm like, I can't see that, but there are some things that I can see the perspective of. And so I do try and walk with empathy and kindness in that, and knowing that it does have to be hard, to only see my kiddo on certain days. And so that is one thing that I've held perspective for, and walked out, and just, it will do nobody any good for her and I to have a bad relationship, right? There's already strain between her and dad, and all the other things. And so as stepmom and as with my relationship with her, I've always taken it's not going to do any good for me to get in the middle of the chaos in a way. And so I try my best to remain that neutral party in a way. Of course, at the end of the day, I'm married to my husband, right? And so what he says goes, the direction that we're going as a family, I'm going with him. But when it comes to, our kiddo and with bio mom, I've tried to kind of help with perspective, and even, with the kiddo, making sure that we care for mom, right? Like this weekend, we're going to go Christmas shopping for mom to be able to buy her a Christmas present, because he's going to be with her this year. And, it's stuff like that where can we still, bring this unity in the midst of such chaos and such disunity. So that, I think, as a stepmom, we can have such, or even just as a, partner to somebody who has kids, we can have such power in still bringing a sense of unity, where no one else in the picture can. And so I do take that role seriously where I can. I have the ability to either bring life or death to this situation in places that other people don't. And so, yeah, that's kind of been my perspective on it, for sure.
Now, did you start working with step families prior to being in one?
No, not really. One of the modalities, and I can kind of talk a little bit about this here, that I work in is called trust-based relational intervention. And it was originally developed for kids from hard places, which is like adoptive or foster kids, is really the original intent for this certain intervention.
Mm-hmm.
But they're starting to see research that it's used in so many different capacities. And so I actually got trained in TBRI, I think just last year, I want to say. I'm going through their practitioner school right now to become a practitioner that I'll be able to use it in all of the areas. But right now I'm just using it like with my clients. But when I got trained in it is when I just gotten married. And so I'm stepping into this role as stepmom. How do I step into this role with this kiddo that isn't biologically mine, that I don't necessarily have the same authority with, nor do I need the same authority with, right? Because he's got a mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I still maintain the sense of structure and nurture in our home? Because there are going to be times when he's alone with me, and there might be times when I have to correct, or I have to say, hey, you need to listen whenever I'm speaking, right? How do we do that from a place that's still going to build connection with him? And so that's what TBRI really focuses on, is it's trust-based relational intervention. So how do I build trust with kids in a place that empowers them to make good decisions, but doesn't break the connection every time I correct them? And so when I got trained in this, I was seeing how helpful it was in our family. It has 3 different principles that you follow: connecting, empowering, and then correcting. So we focus a ton on the connection and the empowering pieces for parents and kids, so that when we come to the correcting piece of it, it's not so big. It's not a blow up. It's not a, you're just the evil stepmom, right? It's this, no, we've built trust. So whenever I say, hey, you need to put that down, there's trust there. And they do that because they trust you and they have that felt safety there. And so whenever I started using it in my own personal journey, I was like, man, we need this with step families, with co-parenting, with blended families, with all of it. And so when I started working at the private practice I'm at now, that's kind of been the big push with them for me in my position, is kind of walking with families as a whole, and how do we kind of create this harmonious unit with not so much chaos in it, and how do we do that? And I've seen it work really well with blended families, because it's a way to parent from a place that's not so harsh or so demanding or forceful. Or so yeah, that's kind of, I really have only been working professionally with blended families in the last 2 years or so, but primarily using this trust-based relational intervention with them.
And that makes 100% sense.
Mm-hmm.
100% sense.
Yeah.
It does. And that's what we try to tell people. You've got to build that foundation first.
Yes.
So they know that this place, or they know that you're coming from a place of love and not judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that, that we're already coming in as this third party that wasn't there from the beginning. And I had the opportunity of coming in whenever he was 6. And so he's still this little innocent, like, I'll trust anybody type kid for the most part. He hasn't had, obviously having 2 households is traumatic, right? Like that alone in itself is, but outside of that, he's had such an amazing like stability to lean back on, that he's a very well-functioning child. So his trust is, he's a very trusting kid. He hasn't had too many experiences where he's had to not trust people. And so, but when I'm still this foreign object, right? This foreign person that he hasn't had, correct him. And so of course, when we were dating and stuff, there was none of that, right? I was,
right.
We went to the fair, we went to the movies. It was just all fun with me. There was none of that. And I was very, very intentional on that. and just even intentional in setting boundaries, right? Like I wasn't cuddling with him or trying to play mom for him, or we weren't playing house. We didn't live together until we were married either, just because for like, right, like we don't want to play house in front of him. That's extremely important to him, or to us, for him, to help negate any hurt that if we don't work out, then he's not left wondering where I'm at.
Right.
And so I focused just on building connection with him, right? And doing that. And so when we got married, of course it shifted a little bit, and it wasn't like that right away. I didn't start off on, okay, now I'm stepmom and now I'm going to come in and I'm going to lay down my rules because this is going to be my house too. No, it's like, let's create this environment together. Like I said, we're very much of a team approach. So even with him, he's 10, we're a team. As a family, we're a team, and we want to do what's best for the team. So, hey, getting up on time is what's best for the team, because then we're not all stressed out trying to get out the door, right? So we got to get up when our alarms go off. And that's just a team thing. We do that together. Eating all of our food, it's a team thing, because if you're not healthy, then you might get sick, and that might cause chaos for the whole team, right? And so that's really the approach we all take together. We've created this little family unit all together. It wasn't just me coming in or dad getting married. It was, okay, now we all live together. What is this going to look like? And so just over time, we've created, traditions and what I like to call rituals, which is a TBRI thing as well. And rituals are just something that you do that's meaningful every single day. And that can be extremely helpful in a step parent role, is having something intentional that you do with your step kid that's special to just you and your step kid every single day. And so that's one of the things I tell him every night before bed is, I love you, I'm proud of you, and I'm glad you're ours. Oh. And so that I will do that without fail every single night that he's with us, is I will say that before he goes to bed. And then he has these little things that he says back to us every single night. And so just finding those little places that we can find routine in and special moments in every day helps create just the absence of chaos, I guess, just this harmony that, we all make decisions together. And yeah, there are times that he's upset at us, or he's upset that he can't stay on screens longer, or he's, but I find that when we have routine and we have these things that we've created as a team together, then it negates this chaotic disruption of, what do you mean I can't do this? What do you mean you're not going to let me do this? No, remember we decided as a family that this is what was going to be best, And so yeah, I can't remember exactly where we were all going with that, but that's kind of been my approach with him, and just building that connection, empowering him to feel like he has say and he has choices in our home. But of course with structure, right? Like dad is dad, and I'm stepmom, and we yes, he's not the parent of the household, right? He's still the child, but he still gets to have say in things and the way that we do life, with healthy boundaries in place as well. And so it sets us up for that nurture piece of it, that so often is missing, especially in blended families sometimes, because you're trying to navigate, how, like, where do I fit in as a step parent in the nurture role? How do I do that? And so yeah.
That is awesome. I'm glad that you didn't come in, I'm the stepmom and I'm going to change things in this place.
Nope. No. And there's been moments where I've, especially getting trained in this, dad is one of the most incredible dads I've ever met outside of my own. I love my own as well, but I've never seen a man who's he's got a good amount of structure in his life. He comes from a good amount of structure in his background. And so, and of course, that's a man too, right? Men are very structure oriented, very, rules and regulations and all these things. And so it's very natural for men to fall that way. But he has done an excellent job of still being a nurturer. And you see it in the way that our kiddo responds to him. And so, but whenever I got trained in this TBRI stuff, I came to him and we even added layers to that. And so, of course, I've been able to, have my footprint in areas of our family as well. But at the same time, again, we've done it as a team. And it's never been, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do. And, it's my house too, right? No, it's our house. And we create that environment together. And I mean, I'm telling you, we don't have blowouts, meltdowns, chaos inside our home. Sure, the court stuff, it gets chaotic but that's on the outside, and he doesn't have a lot of knowledge of that ever. This is probably the first court case because he's 10 now, and so he's actually being involved in it a little bit, just having to be. And so this is the first court case so that he's been aware of. He's never known that to be the case previously. And so that's just, I think, a testament to dad and how dad has parented too, and being able to protect him from all of that and give him a life that he can be a kid. And yeah, it's hard at times because he's got 2 households, but he still really has been able to have a great childhood in the mix and in the middle of all of that.
Okay. So say, for instance, there's a situation regarding your stepson that you and your husband aren't on the same page with. We know that he's bio dad, so he calls the shots. But do you ever feel like you don't have a voice?
So I think one thing that I really have to keep in perspective with all of that is the fact that dad has been there from the very, very beginning. He was there when he was born. When kiddo was born, he's been there with every single court situation that has happened. And I don't even know how many there have, there's been a lot. I can't remember to count them. It's one of those things. And so I have to keep that into perspective as stepmom who just came into the picture 4 years ago, that I don't, nor will I ever have the full picture. I can be told the story a million times. I can look at all the paperwork. I can read all the things, but I will never, ever have the full perspective. And I think that's one thing that you have to realize too, going into all of this, is that at the end of the day, you want to try and have that team mentality, at least from my perspective, trying to kind of, hey, what can we do that's best for the team? But at the end of the day, I have to know that, the bio parents are making these decisions for these kids, and that they have to be the ones that are responsible for that. I chose to be in this life, right? I chose to love this child. I chose to love my partner. But at the end of the day, I also chose to give up a little bit of control of that. And especially as a woman, that can be very challenging, of releasing that control. But I'm going to do myself no good and I will drive myself crazy at the end of the day, trying to hold on to that and make my voice heard. I still think communication with your partner is absolutely important. And I think being able to create a space for both of you where you can talk about that, like, hey, I know that you had said that you thought this was best, but I kind of have a different thought. Do you mind if I share it? Right? Coming at it from a place that's not so demanding or controlling or my way or the highway, but hey, I just had another thought about this. What do you think about it? But at the end of the day, whatever you decide is cool. It's okay. And really, we've done that a lot, especially when you're dealing with court stuff. You're constantly trying to okay, what's the right decision here? Because it's court and we're trying to make sure everything is good and fine and not cause more chaos. Right. And so we have lots of conversations about, okay, how should we handle that? What does that look like? What should we present here? And, but my ending with all those conversations truthfully has to be, but hey, whatever you think is best, go for it. And then I can't be mad at him for making a decision that's different than what I might think. But at the end of the day, I'm supposed to be his support and be there to try and support him through this and not cause more chaos. Now, do I do that perfectly every time? Absolutely not. There are times whenever, I say, why didn't you help him this way or help do it this certain way? But at the end of the day, he has to be the main decider in all of that. And I can be his aid. I can be his help. I can help.
You can be his
what
cheerleader.
Do you think about this? I can be his cheerleader. I can, I can be there on the good days and the bad days, right? Like that's what vows say if you're married to your partner, right? Like that I'm going to be there through the good and the bad. And so I think that it really is a test during those times when you don't feel like your voice is being heard, because that will happen. Like even in a regular marriage, right? Even in a normal parenting situation, there are times when you may not feel like your voice is being heard, but you really have to check yourself at the end of the day. And, am I just needing to be right about this? Or can I let go a little bit of that? Bio parents are never going to be perfect. They're never going to make the right decision every single time either, but that's okay. They're human too. And so I need to help create a space where we are on this journey together, and it's not my way or your way. It's okay, let's brainstorm and figure this out. But at the end of the day, you're the primary parent. And so whatever you think is good, go for it. Because again, I'll go back to the very beginning. He has been there since day one. He has seen bio moms, ups and downs or whatever in betweens the entire time. I've only gotten a taste of it. And so I have to defer to his knowledge and his understanding. And he's the expert in this family on that right now. And so, and always will be, because he'll always have that time on me to some extent. Now, do we bring different perspectives in? Yes, because we all have the ability to have these different perspectives. And that's why I think the open communication piece is so important. But it's going into a relationship knowing that and being okay with that. And honestly, doing your own work through therapy and through community and whatever that looks like for you, doing your own work so that you deal with your triggers. Because if that's a trigger for you, then this might not be the spot for you as a stepmom or, or anything like that. And so it is definitely something that happens, but it's just kind of a part of the gig.
Yeah. It's part of the gig. That's a good way to put that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about your partner and the ex having their own chat and you're not a part of it. I 1,000,000% agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're each other's baggage.
Yeah, exactly.
They can deal with each other, and your partner can let you know what you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's because I could absolutely drive myself crazy trying to be the mediator between the two, right? Like, no, y'all go pay someone else for that. No, not really. But at the same time, if there's been times where bio mom will send me a text message and I'll shoot it over to dad and say, hey, she asked me this. What do you think? And we talk for a second, and then I'll respond back to her, especially silly things like that. Or, there's been times when there's been some schedule conflict and she'll be, hey, would you mind picking him up from school? And then I'm going to come get him. And yeah, okay. She's just trying to figure that out really quickly, but I'm always letting bio dad know that. And then there are times when bio dad's talking with bio mom and they're figuring stuff out. And, one of the things with having my stepson, he's here most of the time, is I am a lot more involved than some other step parents might be, because he goes to school where we're at. So, so there are times when I'm making sure grandma's picking him up from school, or I'm going to pick him up from school, right? Because I have a very, very flexible schedule, and I did that on purpose for him. Because I wanted him to be able to come home on a Tuesday and just chill on the couch and not have to go to an after school program or something like that. And so there are times that I am a little bit more involved, but at the end of the day, most of the things are between the two of them. And then, bio dad will be like, hey, she's going to come do this later. She's going to come drop this off. And I'm like, okay, cool, great. So yeah, I think it would get messy. And I think, communication over text is already messy at times. And so when you're adding in, I can only imagine being a bio mom, having to have another woman play that role sometimes for my kid, right? That's got to be hard. And that's where that perspective thing comes in, of that has to be hard sometimes, knowing that I'm not the one that gets to pack my kid lunch every single day for school or whatever. There are different things for different people that they wish that they could be doing, but I'm doing that for him. And again, it's not in a way to replace her position in his life ever, but it's just a part of the gig. Again, dad has to go to work super early some days. And so I'm doing lunch packing for school or taking him to school. And that's just kind of how our worlds operate sometimes. But at the end of the day, it would be messy for me to be in the mix of a group text message, because sometimes they don't agree, right? Sometimes it gets a little heated or it gets a little crazy. And so there's no reason for me to be.
Then it'll be you're siding with your husband, or you don't want to not side with him.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where that neutrality, I think, really comes in, is being able to, as best as possible, be the neutral party. Like, be the one that stays as neutral as possible, because it's going to be so hard. Like, I don't care what, the best blended family co-parenting situations in the world. I mean, there was a reason that they're not together anymore, right? That a bio mom and bio dad aren't together. There's reasons. And so there's always going to be tension there, no matter how great it is. There's always going to be something, or there could be something. And so that's where, as a step parent or as a partner to somebody who has kids, like, remaining that neutral party can be so important for the stability and the health of your family as a whole. Because then, yes, at the end of the day, am I always going to side with my husband? Sure. But I don't need to just blast that every second I can everywhere.
Right.
And that's part of staying out of those group text messages, I think, allows for that, because then that's their baggage. Like you said, they're dealing with their baggage, and I can stay over here and I don't have to get as riled up, right? And then I can also still offer just kindness wherever, because I'm not in the mix of all of that. And then I don't get thrown into the chaotic text messages back and forth or anything like that. And so,
you don't get blamed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and two, that's so very important for if you do have kids of your own, because that way you're not wrapped up in the crap going on between your husband and his ex, and you can focus on your child. Yeah,
exactly. So, that's just the way that I've found that adds to that survival. Being able to survive all of this is keeping a little distance with that and just allowing it to be what it needs to be on that end. And, it doesn't mean that my husband doesn't come to me every now and then and be like, well, how should we deal? Like, we're looking at switching nights because of this situation. How do you think that would, do you think that would work well with our schedule? It doesn't mean that we don't still talk about that stuff sometimes, or there's not times that we make decisions together, but then he's always the one that's going to send that message to her and talk it out with her at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, because that's his job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, what is one piece of advice, I know what you're going to say though, that you would give someone entering into a step family?
I mean, I would go back to doing your own work and really getting to the nitty gritty of the things that trigger you, the things that, you know, really get on your nerves. Because the things that get on your nerves when you're single, like, just amplify it by 10. Or the things that trigger you, you know, those are the things that at the end of the day are gonna come back up in your marriage, come back up in your relationship with your step kid or your partner's children, or whatever that looks like. I started going through my own journey of just healing even before I met my husband, about a year before, which was great because I was already in the process of doing it. But I just knew from a single perspective, being single, that I want to make sure I'm the best version of myself, as best as I can be, going into a marriage someday. And then I ended up meeting my husband, and I'm so glad I started that journey, because there have been so many times that, you know, I might get triggered of, well, I just can't do anything right. I think that's a big one for a stepmom that is walking through whatever they're walking through, is you just can't do anything right because your voice doesn't get heard all the time. And you're dealing with so many dynamics, especially with somebody coming into a relationship that they have a kid and they've never had a kid themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a child, you have all those mom hormones that come into your body. I don't have any of those because I've never had my own child. And so having to kind of fake it till you make it type deal is hard at times. But because I've done my work, I can stop myself whenever our kiddo is doing something that I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm about to lose my cool right now, because I like, okay, Jessica, what is really bothering you? Like, is it because you're frustrated that you can't have alone time? Well, guess what? You made this decision and it's okay. You'll get some alone time later when he's asleep. Like, chill. Right. And so it's just, and I learned that through my healing process and through my therapy process, to be curious about my own behaviors and be curious about my own thoughts and be curious about my own feelings and emotions towards things. And it's not, I always tell this to every person I meet, it's not from a place of judgment that we're curious. It's from a place of compassion and empathy for ourselves, of being curious of how you were raised, and that how you were raised isn't the only way to raise your kids, right? You're going to do things differently, but it's the only thing that you have to go off of to raise your own kids. And so be curious about how that was, and the things that your parents did or didn't do that were great for you that you want to change, or and how that's impacted you as an adult, and the experiences that you've had. You know, am I angry because he did something, or am I dealing with something that might have happened a long time ago that is being triggered, that now is making me angry, but it's not really him, right?
And because a lot of times we don't even notice that's what's happening.
Yeah, we don't, because we don't take the time to, okay, let me stop and let me do a little self-inventory here. Like, is it really him? Or did I just not eat breakfast this morning? And I'm a little on
Am
edge,
I hangry,
right?
or is he being a douche?
Exactly. That's my number one thing. And I mean, that's for everybody. That's the first question we ask in our house for the most part. Like, do we need a snack? For myself included.
Yeah. The HALT acronym. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Yes. Absolutely.
I tell David it's never a good time to talk to me because I'm always one of those four.
Yeah, same. I know. I'm trying to figure out how to get them all perfectly aligned, but it just never seems to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So we should just never talk to anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just go into my little hole and never come out again.
Yes.
No, that would just be the one thing I would say, is just doing your own work, learning to look inside of yourself first before lashing out or doing anything irrational. So, yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things that was hard for me, because I had to look at myself and see where I was part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because I did come in and throw a wrench into the plans of, I'm going to take over.
Yeah.
And it was with the best of intentions. But the funny thing is, I think I parented the stepkids like my mom parented me. But with my son, I didn't want that relationship with him that I had with my mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the stepkids, the triplets being 5 years older than my son, there was a lot of time in between for me to figure all that out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So a lot of times our guilty parenting comes from how we were raised versus because we're split up as parents.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, we just finding the humanity in all of this too. We are all humans. Nobody is going to be perfect. Nobody is going to come into a blended family perfectly. Nobody is going to do court perfectly. Nobody is going to parent perfectly. Nothing is going to be perfect. But if we can have that compassion and empathy for ourselves and for all of the parties involved, I think it just goes a long way in being able to grow and learn from your experiences and then not carry shame and guilt, which then usually turns into some sort of bitterness and anger at the end of the day. And so, just knowing that you're going to go in and you're not as a, somebody who's coming into a situation like this, you're not going to know it all, and that's okay. But being open to learn as you go and to learn those things about yourself, like, okay, I did this differently and I liked it better this way. And okay, let me try that again next time. Or, just being able to look at it as a journey and look at it as a growth opportunity that we're all learning and we're all human. It just helps so much in the whole process because none of it's easy. And so, yeah, that would be my advice all around.
Yep. And to not take things personally.
Yeah. Nope. Just don't even go there. It's not worth your stress for the rest of the day. Don't ruin your day by taking it personally. There's been so many things that have happened that I could have been like, oh, well, she just, or he just didn't, it's like,
he loves her more than me because he's agreed with her or.
Yeah. No, I don't have time for that. I would rather live my life at peace and joyful. And it doesn't mean, again, that I don't still have those moments, right? But at the end of the day, I'm striving towards just like, I want to let that go because it takes more away from me than it does anyone else. Because that person might have said that or done that in that one moment, but they're not really thinking about it anymore, probably. But I'm sitting here letting it ruin my entire day or my week or my month or my life. And I just don't want to live that way personally. And so you got to let it kind of roll off. And there will be times when we have to take that seriously and we got to deal with that. But then those will be intentional and you'll be able to come at that from a place of not holding on to so much. And you'll probably be more effective at dealing with that one thing when you let all the little things roll off your back, because it's just that one thing that we're dealing with. It's not, oh, well, let me tell you about the time that this and this and that, then our emotions just go skyrocketed and, we can't control anything. So,
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Jessica, it has been great having you as a guest on our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope the conversation helps somebody out there. And yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And I would love to have you back on in a couple of years.
I would love that. I'll probably have a little bit more under my belt too, talk a little bit more about things. So yeah, I would love it.
Well, and hopefully you'll have a baby of your own.
Yes, that's the goal.
And we can talk about adding an hours child.
Yep. We sure can.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. It was nice to have Jessica to share her story. If you would like to share your story with our listeners, please contact us at nachokids.com. Oh, that should have said, you can email us at contactus@nachokids.com.
Yeah, that sounds better.
That sounds better.
Too many contact us ads.
Yeah. I confused myself. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. You do that often. It's pretty fun sometimes.
Let's not talk about that right
now. All right, folks. That is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share this out. Do your part in helping others by simply sharing.
because that is caring.
That's what they say. All right. So remember, for Laura and myself, life is good
when you nacho.